Hello everyone. It's me, Arden Lee, and in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about, is it possible to unintentionally hex someone? Is it possible for us to essentially have magical impact even without the presence of magical intent? And I'm also going to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the Pai no Su, which is the song that I released for the holidays just a couple days ago under my solo project name, Arden and the Wolves. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose to do that. And what do these two subjects have to do with one another? Well, we are going to find out. So first, let's go ahead and dive in. Is it possible to unintentionally hex someone? Is it possible for us to have magical impact without magical intent? And the moment that I speak this question, the answer that comes up for me is, of course it is, right? Because if something is true in the mundane world, it is quite likely possible in the magical world as well. And the harm-free existence is an illusion, right? Just by virtue of my existing in the set of ecosystems that I exist in, there is no action that I can take that is not going to have some sort of impact, right? I can't walk outside and step on a square foot of grass without potentially squishing a bug or disrupting an ecosystem. And, you know, looking over into my kitchen right now, I'm seeing the recycling that I have set out there. And it's a reminder of how I exist in this set of systems. And as a consumer, I am naturally going to say produce waste, right? And I can try and minimize that harmful impact, you know, by recycling what I can, but I'm never going to eliminate it entirely, right? Just by existing in this interconnected web of systems as we all do and taking any action of any kind, we are always going to have impact on one another. So, and the more that we try to pretend that this is not true, the more that creates opportunity for shadow. It's always the folks who are really attached to their egoic notion of being someone who is all light or all good, who ends up creating the most shadow, right? And you point that out to a person, hey, I think you might be having a harmful impact here that you're not aware of. And that's the person who gets very defensive, right? No, not me. I'm a good person. How dare you, right? This is an attack on me and my character, instead of actually opening up and acknowledging the possibility of like, well, pretty much any choice I make is going to have impacts of some kind that I'm not aware of. Is this something that I want to look at? And is this something that I want to decide to change because that's in my own integrity with my values, right? So I actually feel like making this video in many ways is it's vulnerable. it's a vulnerable share, right? Because for anyone, and especially for a magician or a facilitator, to say like, hey, I had an impact that I wasn't aware of, and it maybe created some negative or harmful circumstances that I did not intend. Like, naturally, of course, that is vulnerable, but I think that the mature thing to do is open it up and create a conversation around that, because the last thing that I want to do is deny and push that into shadow, because as we all know, shadow can always come back to bite us when we least expect it. So being able to look at it and examine it and make more conscious choices around it, I think is the highest path when something like this happens. And also to to start a conversation about it, because assuming that those of you who are watching this video are interested in magic or are also practicing magicians, then this is something that we're all going to want to be aware of is possible, so that we can create more and more consciousness around that. And I'll also say that there's that debate about, well, is it magic if there was an intent behind it, right? I've talked about this in some of my videos before. Can you really say it's magic if it's, if you didn't sit down and do an intentional casting? Is that just... But I really think that for the purposes of this discussion, that debate is basically semantics, and it doesn't actually, it does not excuse us from our actions once we become aware of those actions, just to say, well, I did not do that intentionally, therefore it doesn't count, right? Because that's not, again, that wouldn't be a great excuse in the mundane world. So in the magical world, I think we want to look at that as well. And so something came up for me within the context of this past year, where some of the synchronicities that came up and also some of the divination that I was doing showed that there was a place where the negative emotions that I had been harboring, the anger that I had been harboring over, and to be fair, this was very justified anger. I was extremely justified in feeling angry for things that had happened and the ways that I was treated, which were very unfair. And unfortunately, there was no avenue at the time for resolution in that situation. Any expression of the anger I felt or any desire for healing and reconciliation had been blocked and cut off pretty soon after that happened. And I really tried to like white knuckle getting over it. I really tried to white knuckle that detachment and just say like, move on, it shouldn't be that important, just forget it, put it behind you. And unfortunately that was really difficult. I'm autistic, and part of the way that my autism expresses itself is failure for time to degrade certain emotions, right? I can very much tap in to things that happened to me in my past and feel like those things are present, right? And it's my responsibility also to master that so that those things are not ruling me. But I'll put it there that things like rumination, intrusive thoughts, and feeling the intensity of past experiences are all things that are typical of autism. And in this case, I was still very angry about things that had happened that I had not gotten a chance to resolve. And as time went on, some of those circumstances came back up, and there were certain signs and certain results of my divination that showed pretty clearly that my anger had specifically had a negative impact, that my anger had caused some of the typical signs of hexing or jinxing, right? Which is feelings of being lost, feelings of depression, feelings of being out of sync with time. Part of how I came across this is Jason Miller's amazing book, Protection and Reversal Magic. And I felt very guided to read it at the time. And it turned out that there were some passages in this book that when I read them, they hit and they resonated very clearly and spoke to my experience in that way that when I read something, when I take in a bit of information from all the information in the world that is surrounding me, when a certain piece has a really specific resonance that I feel in my body, I have learned over time that is often a magical sign, right? Or a bit of guidance for me to look at. And here it is, right in this book, what Jason Miller says on the subject of unintentional hexing is, what complicates matters is that not every curse is intentional. It is well known that gifted people can manifest powerful hexes without any training or intent. In Italy, for instance, malocchio, the evil eye, is generally thought to be cast through the sheer power of envy, hatred, or simple ill wishing. Anyone with enough power, a sufficient emotional charge, and a target can launch an accidental psychic attack. So I read that, and based on the other things that were coming up from my reality in the time, I was like, oh, that sounds about right. And while again, as I said, my feelings of anger in this situation were justified, I did not in any way want to cause the person in this situation harm. I did not want to cause any of the effects that it seemed had come up. And yeah, so it was a real reconciliation for me with my own power also, because one of the things that also became clear is that it seemed that none of these effects happened years ago when the original circumstances had happened, right? And I was very angry back then, and I didn't see any of those effects come to pass. And then, I was disconnected from the situation for quite a while. And what I believe happened is that over time, my anger around the situation failed to degrade with time, as we just spoke about. But what happened that I took for granted is that my magical power also increased. Since that situation had gone down a few years ago, I've been through remarkable initiations. I have accomplished sometimes very intense, personally transformative magic. I am not the same person that I was back when all of that original situation went down. In addition, I've also, in that time, been studying with my teacher, Grant Morrison, and they have also now publicly named me heir to their magical lineage. So naturally, my own practice in magic has deepened and strengthened over time, both with my own personal practice and through my study with my teacher. And my teacher has also conferred on me officially and publicly the title of being heir to their lineage. And that has also increased my magical power in ways that I was taking for granted. I'm one of those people who often will play down my own abilities out of perhaps an overcorrection of not wanting to be too egoic, right? Because I see I see the folks around there, especially in magic, it's such a perilous path, right? It's not called the perilous path for nothing. That the minute that they get some success under their belt, it's, oh, I am the most powerful being in the universe. And I've always wanted to shy away from that. And in this case, unfortunately, it seems like what I did was actually an overcorrection. I actually underestimated the power that I had, so that the effects of the same anger that I had when I was a less powerful person were not the same as the effects of still in some ways harboring, despite trying to get over it, ultimately that just created repression. And that same anger that ended up being repressed in me because it had nowhere to express or resolve itself. That ultimately ended up causing a tremor in the force. So my signs and divination would seem to indicate to me. And so naturally, this was extraordinarily humbling because, again, it's very vulnerable to admit, oh, I'm a magician and I was having an effect that I did not intend and was not aware of. But the moment that it was brought into my awareness through these signs and through certain events connecting to one another that illustrated the timeline, the sort of story of how things had unfolded quite clearly, immediately, naturally, it was on me to fix that. And I was also shown, I was also shown that ultimately this was for the best, that bringing up this repressed anger so that it could be acknowledged and released and create an actual real opportunity for healing and reconciliation was ultimately in the highest good, right? And I am not comfortable making that judgment personally, just say like, oh, I was causing harm, but it was all for the best in the end, right? But that is what my divination showed, and it was therefore also on me to make sure that I course corrected, right? It's not enough to just be like, oh, well, it was all for the best, so that's fine. It's also on me, if I understand the impact that I had, then it's also on me to correct that, right? So luckily, bringing us back to protection and reversal magic, luckily, Jason also describes what to do after an unintentional psychic attack. And here what it says is the first and best way to make reparations after an attack is prayer and acts of devotion. Thank the gods and the spirits for taking care of you in your hour of need. If you worship no gods, then direct your devotion to the enlightened ones who have gone before you and serve as guides on the path. Direct it to the universe itself. It is not my place to tell you how to pray or what to pray to, but I do want to stress the awesome potential of energized prayer. And something that came up for me in the wake of some of these events unfolding is I was listening to this song called Pai Nosso, which is the Our Father in Portuguese. And it is a song that is very meaningful to me because the first time I ever heard it was in an ayahuasca ceremony in 2017, during which I had this very powerful vision of love and unity and heaven on earth and sustainability and all the things that I stand for. And all of a sudden, all these reasons why this was the exact right path for me to make magical reparations for the part that I had played, that I had impact on in this unfolding situation. It was just made so clear to me that this is the thing that I should do. And first of all, the Our Father, of course, is a prayer in itself. And for me, as someone who has declared that my most powerful forms of magic are through my songs, right? Are through turning my songs into specific acts of magic as hypersigils, essentially, right? And so that combined with the fact that it is the Our Father, and as the Our, as many of you may know, the Our Father goes, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And this has been a really strong theme for me in my work, especially through the full-length album that I've spent the past roughly 4 years working on creating. As you may know, the track 10 token cover of the album is a cover of Belinda Carlisle's 1987 hit "Heaven Is a Place on Earth," and there are also there's lyrics and themes of let the kingdom come, and for me, who was raised Catholic, went to Catholic school for 12 years, this has been very much for me a wonderful metaphor, right, for the idea of heaven on earth, meaning essentially the knowledge that we are all interconnected, the knowledge that love is the most powerful healing force on the planet, right, to bring love onto earth as it is in heaven, sustainability, right, the idea that we can all experience our interconnectedness and create community on earth itself that is supportive of every aspect of the ecosystem, that has, as Daniel Schmachtenberger says, right, that sustainability, right, creating a closed loop system, and ecosystem that is not eating its own tail, an ecosystem that is self-supporting, means that every agent in the commons must be informed and motivated by the well-being of every other agent in the commons. We either figure out this planet together, or we are going to drain it of resources. We are going to escalate technology until it destroys us, whether through weapons technology, whether through plundering the resources of the planet until there is nothing left to sustain us, et cetera, right? So my idea very much of heaven is this idea of interconnected sustainability and being able to anchor that here on earth. So combined with the vision that I had during the ayahuasca ceremony to this very song, the first time I heard it, and wanting to anchor that vision on earth, combined with that and the fact that it is the prayer of the Our Father, which specifically speaks to heaven on earth, which again is a big theme in my own work. And also then, it's a piano song. It was, the version that I had heard of it was by the artist, the Brazilian artist, Gabriel Guedes de Alameda, and he plays piano to it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to find someone to play piano for me. And I thought, unless you learn it yourself, Arden. And I really haven't played piano since high school, and I'm not very good at it. But I remembered, I tapped into that part of me that played piano in high school, and was like, wait, no, there's part of me that still knows how to do this. And if I actually sit down and if I just practice every day and I listen to the recording and I adapt and learn the piano part myself, you know, I'm confident that with enough practice, I can do that. And I can even make that a daily act of devotion that will then charge this song with all of the days and all the energy that I've spent practicing it. And also the fact that it was a financial sacrifice for me too, being in the middle of wrapping up an EP and a full-length album. I'm really stretched on my budget in terms of music. And the last thing I needed to do was like release a single that's like, you know, a religious themed song in a foreign language, which should not, right, quote unquote, should not technically do anything for my career, right? So all of those things combined together just made it so obvious that this was exactly the thing that I needed to do in order to magically create repair in the situation that I had contributed to. That it was basically like the universe was saying to me, like, well, you have an opportunity to do this. And I was like, well, if I don't do this, you know, what message am I sending? That I have an opportunity to correct the situation, and I'm just going to choose not to do it. Why? Because learning piano is too hard, because making this song is going to be too expensive or whatever. But the circumstances all ultimately aligned, and I'm really happy with it. And I'm also happy to say that so far anyway, I have received positive news that it seems like the situation itself is doing better. So it seems like, you know, as I always say with magic, we can never prove causation, but as I also like to say, we can also look at something and say, well, it didn't not work, right? So there's my hope anyway, that that in the wake of bringing awareness to where I had perhaps caused negative impact without intending it, I can bring that consciousness to the actions that I'm taking, and I can take actions to cause a positive impact instead. So there we have it. So it is it is in fact possible to cause magical impact, even if we do not have specific magical intent around it. And my belief is that the healthier thing to do is to acknowledge this and to bring more awareness, more consciousness to the actions that we take. And for me, it especially means that my emotional self-mastery now has to be in alignment with the amount of power that I have accrued for myself. It is no longer aligned for me to have the emotional self-mastery of the person that I was a few years in the past when I was still much more powerless than I am today. It is now on me to be more responsible about my emotions, and to realize that my emotions and my thoughts are more capable of causing change and causing impact than I was previously aware of. And I do think, again, as I said, that it's important to have these conversations, because the more we push these capabilities into shadow, then the more our shadow may end up coming back to bite us. So I do hope also that you take a listen to the Painosu. I'm really excited about it. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And it showed me also some things musically that I didn't necessarily know that I was capable of. So in the end, I'm really grateful that I did it. I'm really grateful that I have that recording now. And I hope that you enjoy it. And I hope that you put it on all your holiday playlists. Even though it is not specifically a holiday song, I figured with the religious theme and the sort of cozy chamber music, cathedral, dream pop feel that I put to this song, I think it fits in with a lot of the sort of darker traditional carols like Oh Holy Night or Carol of the Bells. So I hope that it brings you lots of love and joy to your holiday season, however you choose to celebrate. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And may we all have greater awareness of the ways that we all individually impact the collective around us, even without trying. And I am wishing all of you a wonderful, joyful, and blessed holiday season this December. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.